remember this one simple fact that we come into this world with our souls and we leave this world with our souls. So the whole job, the whole thing we're here to do is to polish that soul along the way so that we leave more evolved than we arrived. So whenever we have a decision to make, a choice to make, I always say, ring the high bell. Do the thing that your higher self is cheering you on to do, because those choices are going to polish you and polish you and polish you. So when you leave, you don't have regrets.
Welcome to New Earth Podcast, where we dive into inspiring stories, profound wisdom, and insights from remarkable individuals who are driving the consciousness shift on our planet. If you're ready to elevate your awareness and well-being, you're in the right place. But before we dive into today's episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Together, we'll continue to explore the ideas and conversations that help you up-level your consciousness. Thank you so much for your support and your comments and for being part of this journey. Hi, and welcome back to my channel, everyone. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce Hope Fitzgerald. And Hope is a spiritual teacher, intuitive Dowser coach and author. And in 2010, she experienced a series of profound visions that introduced her to a 10th dimensional energetic tool known as the infinity wave. And since then, she's been teaching people how this powerful tool can assist in navigating our rapidly changing world with more flow, ease, and grace. So today we'll be chatting about the infinity wave and how it works to elevate consciousness and how we can apply it in our daily lives. Welcome, Hope.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be with you.
Just wonderful to have you here as well. And I've been really enjoying your conversations. I know that you connected with my beautiful friends, Clara Apollo and Pam Gregory, who I recently had on the podcast as well. So it feels like we're in flow.
Two wonderful ladies, yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'd love to chat with you about how the visions appeared to you. I understand it was during a really challenging time in your life, so how you first discovered the infinity wave.
Oh, sure. Well, it was during a very challenging time, very, very difficult year, 2010. And, you know, it's funny how sometimes these challenges are just the eye of the needle that we need to go through to have our next iteration of life. I call it the peduncle, and I'll explain that in a minute. But after 9 months of this terrible time, I knew that I was very low on everything, low energy. I mean, like my tanks were empty physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So when that happens, as we all know, that is when we can become vulnerable to disease or any kind of number of things. And I knew that. And so I went to have these back-to-back sound healing retreats from Tom Kenyon in the Pacific Northwest, just to refill my coffers, but also I wanted to clean my inner bowl. I always picture it as a big brass bowl, and I just wanted to scrub it and sort of get all story gone from me. And as I entered into the practices with Tom, it was like I got clicked in sync with him, and each day, each practice over the 2 weeks, I was able to scrub away. And finally, on the very last practice, I was feeling so amazing and empty. But I had one last question. And so right before we went into that last practice, I asked this question, and it was to gain understanding about what this whole dramatic year had been about. Like, why did it take such a frying pan on the head for me, you know, to go through this? What did I need to understand? And during the practice, I got my answer, and it was surprising and a complete reframe. And in that understanding, I was so grateful for this new way of thinking of it, and a way that was not sticky, would not bring me down, but actually free me. That in my mind's eye, of course, I was sitting there quite still, but in my mind's eye, I went prostrate on the floor, and out of me sprang the words, "I am a willing vessel, do with me what you will." Now, those are not words that I was used to saying. I mean, it just boom came out of me like that. I was quiet, but this was all happening inside. And the practice ended. I came home so empty, so free. It was absolutely blissful for 3 days. And I had a friend over, my dear friend, and she wanted to hear all about my trip. So she was sitting in the living room, and I was walking across the living room, starting to tell her about it. And then I was confronted with this vision of a huge wave right in front of me in the living room, gigantic and turquoise and beautiful and moving slowly toward me, but not in a threatening way. And there was a kind of a ticker tape, like you see on the evening news, going across. And it said, this, paraphrasing, this wave represents a push of evolution that is coming to the planet and will be anchoring in at the end of 2011. This was November 2010. If you choose to swim with it, surf it, move with it, things will go better for you than if you resist. And because we all know that's when you get knocked down. Then the wave turned on its side. So now it was this beautiful curling wave. I actually have an image, this beautiful curling wave like that. And it kind of resembles the letter C, right? And it was just hovering there like that. And the byline that went underneath said, as the wave moves away from the shore and deepens into the seabed to get its energy to create that crest, that's the physics of a wave, so should you, meaning me, but now meaning all of us, leave your book learning on the shore, go to the earth, go to the wisdom keepers of the earth for your knowledge. Mix that with whatever this new incoming push of wave was, and that would be the way to go forward. And then that curling wave didn't just fall down into the ocean as it normally would, but it turned into this figure eight of flowing water, which I can show you here on the cover of the book. So it was going like this, okay? And that hung out in front of my face about 18 inches high, and there was no byline. And it hung out there for about 3 days, and I could see through it. This is the only time not the only time since then, but the first time that I was aware that I was seeing with something other than my eyeballs. But I was seeing clearly, but it was almost like cellophane in a way. And this figure eight hung out in front of me, and I was aware of it, and I was going about my life, but so it got a little annoying after a while. So I sat down with my dowsing rods. By that point, I'd been a dowser for 18 years or so. And I had a unique way of working with dowsing because I taught myself. And I didn't yet know there were dowsing societies around the world. And, there was a lot I didn't know because I just had started and just kept going and never really researched. Plus, when I started, there was no real, internet was new, and and I had babies, and anyway, so I started asking questions about this figure eight of water, and over a series of sessions, I came to understand that it was 10th dimensional in nature. It was a gift from a loving universe for the times that would be coming. It would be that it was comprised of this infinite love and compassion that is at this 10th dimensional level. And I knew about dimensions as much as any of us know about, I wouldn't say I was an expert in any case, but I just knew it to be what they were trying to communicate, it was very refined, like the most refined level of love and compassion. And, when we think about Christed energy that was received on the planet back during those days, that was more of a seventh dimensional energetic. So here we had an upgrade. And so I'm receiving all this information. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Oh, and I'm beginning to think I'm losing my marbles at this point because, even though the walls of my office are stacked with all the books that I've read for decades and decades, I never thought I would be having one of these experiences because I knew a lot. Ha ha ha. It's all when they said leave the book learning on the shore, they were totally talking to
Experience in
me.
real life.
Yeah,
Wow, what a journey. What an incredible journey. And I'm really curious about how this came out of a moment of gratitude and surrender. That feels really important because it was almost like you were entering into a new perception and awareness within yourself, which was then something new was able to present in your inner or outer world, however that
exactly,
vision was.
Sarah. Exactly, Sarah. That moment of complete surrender and giving over uh, was the key and was very quickly realized after I'd started to find out what this is, because then I was asked, then I said, well, what am I? So what? Okay, so it's a figure eight of flowing water and it's a 10th dimensional. And that's when I had to make good on my declaration because I was told, then I said, well, what am I supposed to do with this? Oh, well, you need to now teach this to the world. It's for the world. I went,
Yeah.
I live in Western Massachusetts next to a sheep farm. Like, how am I going to, I don't have a website. Like, I'm not even equipped.
And this is
And
25 years ago, and not like now. That would be it would have been very different then to now.
it was 15 years ago.
15
And
years ago. Sorry, my
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, no, that's fine. And but I said, no way. I don't want to teach this. I don't want to teach. I am a student of spirituality. I still am. I think we all are. But I didn't want to get out of that mode, right? And they were saying, "Oh no, you need to teach now." And I'm saying, "No, no, no. That no, no way." And that's when they reminded me of my declaration, I am a willing vessel, do with me what you will. Be careful when you say such a thing, because
Be careful
you
what
will
you
be
ask
given a
for.
task.
Yeah,
I that's when the real surrender happened.
beautiful.
So it's one thing, it emanates from your being. It's not a thing you can just say. It comes from your soul. And then you've got to put it into action. And that's when it really got scary because, stepping into the front of the room as a teacher, I always feel even weird about saying that now. I think of myself as a guide. I also am a student and a facilitator. Okay, but taking that role on is a very vulnerable place to be and a very charged place to be.
Yeah,
There's a lot of projections. There's a lot of, and you really have to manage. You have to manage a lot of personality within oneself and within others. So I was very reluctant to do it, but they reminded me of my vow, and you can't say no to spirit. You can't say no. Ultimately, why would you?
well, I'm very pleased that you said yes because it's absolutely incredible what you're bringing through. I'd like to touch a little bit on what you said about, when the wave was coming in and changing into the figure eight, how at one point the knowledge that came through with it was this tapping into the ancient wisdoms,
Yeah.
but also bringing in this new wave of consciousness. And I'm very curious of the energy of the mixing of the old and new, and how that's actually held within the symbol itself, because the infinity has that timeless quality.
I, at that time, I had not yet ventured into shamanism, but I was definitely dipping my toes in it. I was working a lot with sound. I had seven, and I still do, I have more now, seven crystal bowls, one for every note. And I had been playing them and doing silent meditations for years. So I had chimes, and I'd started to work with sound. I'd started to work with the earth and using the sound with the earth. So those things were percolating within me. But when I understood going to the wisdom keepers of the earth and the wisdom of the earth, I realized it's time to kind of step it up. So I started working with a Peruvian shaman that I know. I went to Peru, then I started taking groups to Peru, and I just started to gather more shamanistic tools. And I did it here and there, piecemeal. I didn't take one long course or anything like that because I actually felt and was taught by the wave that there are many roads to become your own personal shaman. I'm not taking anything away from the great wisdom keepers and the shamanic courses and all of that. I absolutely honor those. For me, it was more like finding my own way.
Yeah.
And I took some courses and I learned a bunch of things and I just found my own way. And I still have, you could do it for the rest of your life. We do if we want to. But the wave taught me how to connect with the natural world by using it
Mm.
and using it to go down into the earth, using it to connect with trees and rocks and water and mountains and clouds and stars and sun and all of the whole shebang. Using it so when we're connecting with the natural world with in a 10th dimensional energy, everything opens up. The animals open, everything opens and comes to us and starts to communicate. So it's really a beautiful, and this is important, quick
Mm.
tool for connection. Um, so I started to include much more of the ancient wisdom. I have always been interested in the stone circles, the rocks, the ancient structures, architecture. What's with these many civilizations that came before, and that is completely fascinating to me. And so when I would dowse every year for what journey I should take a group on, um, almost always, no, I'm going to say always, it's to somewhere where these ancient architectures are.
Yeah. That's incredible. And you were almost modeling, well, you were modeling the blending of the old and the new in the looking to the old traditions, but then finding your own path with it, that hero's journey. So that was really incredible. I just want to share that I've done a lot of training with a Taoist master, Mantak Chia, who was actually on my podcast. He was the last guest on my podcast. And we work with the microcosmic orbit. I'm sure you're familiar with this, Hope.
Mhm.
And it works. I'm just going to explain it by bringing the energy up the governor channel and down the functional channel in the front. But what a lot of people don't know is it then goes down to the perineum. It goes down the back of the legs and up the front of the legs to form a figure eight. And this circulates. And you can do it within your energetic field to clear a lot of blockages within the energetic field. But you can also go further and further out with that figure eight. So you're going out to the cosmos and down to the core of Mother Earth.
Yes.
So you get that grounding and connection. And it really, it's very interesting what you're saying, because it's getting us to re-examine our place within the cosmos, because it's enabling that deep grounding and connection with it's almost like an anchor point, like I'm here now, but there's all this to connect with. So is that something you'd like to speak to?
Well, that's one of the practices that came forward. So let me just circle back a little bit, because when I got this message, you've got to create workshops. I dowsed for how many? One a month for 9 months. They were in sections of three, three, three. And that but I had no idea what I was going to be teaching, or I have a figure eight, maybe I don't. And that was terrifying to me, because I'm fairly buttoned up, much more so even then than now. And I didn't like the idea of teaching something I didn't know what it was.
Yes.
So they said, well, we're going, just hang in there. So I would sit down once a week with my dear friend, and I'd start to douse, because I didn't know what else to do to create this course. And in would all of a sudden my voice would change and be very deep, and out would pop a complete practice, without any ums or ahs, like, words I wouldn't normally use. So I was not a believer in channeling so much until that point. And then I found this is happening to me. So I guess I need to eat humble pie on that one. But one a week, I would get a practice. And by the end, and I never knew what was coming in, I would do those three practices, and then I would have the workshop. And then I would bring in the current science, and I would bring in the antiquities, and I'd blend the new with the old, in addition to those three meditations. And really talk about the fact that we are bringing a process called evolution that we think of as happening slowly in the background. It's not, it's happening quickly in the foreground.
Yeah.
And now we're going to add our consciousness to it. So we're going to create conscious evolution. I looked that term up. The only person who had used it was Barbara Marx Hubbard in one class that she taught. I know that's hard to, but sorry. I know that's hard to believe now, because conscious evolution is everywhere, but in 2010 and 2011, nobody was using it. So these workshops were all about conscious evolution, and they were pulling from the past, as you say, and pulling from the present scientifically, and then using the wave to get us somewhere with these practices. When I got to the end, to the ninth practice at the end of the 3 months, I looked back and I realized, oh my goodness, this is a step-by-step process for taking a leap on your spiritual evolutionary path.
I'm getting goosebumps.
I did
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Because they, in the moment, they're like, what is this? What is this one about time? And what is this one about? And the wave is stretching us out. We go down to the center of the earth. We go all the way out in the galaxy. Like, it's our vehicle for all of what you just described, and used in all these different ways. And I realized this, oh my God, this is a brilliant plan. So then I took that and I just kept doing it, and then new practices would come in. But those original 9 practices are absolutely a recipe for this taking an evolutionary leap, which is what we had to get used to doing, because everything was speeding up. So here we had this year of 2011 where we could practice this. You described one way to use the figure eight, and it's not just figure eight, it's water. And that's
Yes.
important.
Yes.
So next time you do it with water and
I'm
see what
gonna
happens.
definitely. Yes.
So it can go as you described, like that, and it can go like this, right? So try both. One is definitely going to be more of the, I understand what you're talking about with the Taoist approach, and that is absolutely fantastic. And I'm really glad you actually mentioned it. So it is a way to completely sort of accept, invite, acknowledge our blueprint, which is to be in the crux of
Mm,
the above and the below.
absolutely.
And I learned through using the wave that the below is the earth and the above is all of this. We're in the middle. The above is not physical, so it can't make things happen on our level. It can
Right.
only speak to us and whisper to us to take action, to make choices, and so on. The same is true of the earth. She's very present. She's speaking loudly, but she can't make things happen other by, causing rumbles. But she speaks to us to take action and to listen to her. We can hear from both, and we're in the middle to enact what these two equally spiritual worlds want to say to us.
That's incredible. And I just want to share an experience I had with the microcosmic orbit after doing a weekend of primordial Qigong. We all stood with our backs towards the tree. And never in my whole life, and never again since, have I felt it. So it was absolutely pulsing through my energy field very, very strongly and intensely. And I personally feel a lot of that was to do with the nature of the tree as that bridge point between heaven and earth, in the same way that we are, that it was
Yes,
able to really kind of energize in a completely different way. So
yes, yes. And I love working with trees. And I actually do a fun to sort of show people how dowsing works and combining it with the wave. I'll take a person to a tree, in a park or whatever, and I'll douse, or I'll ask them to douse. Do I? Because I like to ask permission of the natural world. So, do I have permission, or would you like to have a conversation with me? And if the tree says no, then it's okay. Let's put the dowsing rods down and let's wave the tree for 30 seconds. Just waving, knowing that on that in that watery flow is inherently that infinite love and compassion. We don't have to manufacture the feeling. It's not about emotions, because that's what's happening on 3D. 10D, it's not emotional.
yes.
It's super, super refined. So we just wave the tree for 30 seconds. Then we douse again. Would you be open to having a conversation with me? The rods say yes. And now you can, douse, you can ask the tree questions. You could say, can I come and hug you? Can we have and you start to have a relationship, and you can take pictures of the tree before and after. And quite often you'll start to see an emanation of light. Sometimes a purple, light will come off the tree, and it just opens to us. They are they are conduits, as we are, for the above and the below.
What's coming up for me is like communication, because you've talked about that we can work with it this way, but I understand we can always also work with it, interpersonally in our relationships. And that communication, because, our energy fields ultimately they're overlapping, aren't they? And there's so much communication that happens in the field, but then you're placing intention there as well. That's incredibly powerful. And like you've mentioned, because you're operating from that 10th dimensional, it's going to shift that communication as well. Is that something you can speak to?
Oh, yes, for sure. It is actually magical because, as you say, our fields are overlapping no matter what. When you start to give direction to how we want the fields to interact, it changes everything. HeartMath has proven this with their studies, and they have a lovely graphic out that shows, when you start to imagine love between you or anything like that. Well, this is even more, I'm going to say, even more powerful, because when you connect through 10D, you're okay. So let's imagine 3D is happening beneath this ceiling, right? Down here. And 3D is usually black and white. It's duality.
Yeah.
Yes or no, blah, blah, blah. And that's a struggle conversation between the two. And it's locked down in the ceiling. Once you introduce 10th dimensional energy, right? All of a sudden, this opens up. And what happens is uh, more, first of all, you can hold more than one reality at a time. Yes, and. Oh, yes, and. Yes, and. And maybe 3 or 4 realities. Okay, now we have a whole bunch of things available to us. You've also opened up the field to guidance from other places. Oh, now you're in a heart state, a love state, which we know the future world is going to be in that state, much
Yeah.
more heart-led. And when we say heart-led, it's kind of hard to wrap your ideas around because that means so many things to so many people. To me, it's an inclination of intuition. And this might not make logical sense, but I'm being drawn here for some reason and trusting that.
Yes.
Trusting why I might not fully understand, but so when that's what happens when we introduce the 10D, we don't, I'm not saying the conversation goes immediately to 10D, probably not, but it lifts things out of 3D. And we don't have to know
It's
where it goes.
incredible. That's incredible because when we're in the 3D, we're in the polarization. And I think what's so beautiful about this work is I know from my work with the microcosmic orbit, you're working with the masculine channel at the back, bringing it down to the feminine, bringing it down to the earth, the feminine, and up to the heavens, masculine. So there's that bridging of the polarities, so that's automatically happening with the symbol and the flow, but also my understanding of chi, life force, is that it's not just energy, it carries information, it carries intelligence. So therefore, if the intelligence is from the 10th dimension, that is going to create an evolutionary leap. It's going to be a big jump because it's bringing that through our system.
Yeah, beautifully said, Sarah. And I'm going to add one little wrinkle. So in 2013, I started to channel this being named Zakaya, for lack of a better word. And it's funny because I looked it up later and the word has to do with sound, but I didn't know that yet. So Zakaya introduces, I'll say himself, but it's an energy, right? Zakaya introduces himself to me as um, the being who sits at the right hand of Creator Source.
Wow.
So that creation, kind of like a fountain, is creating like this, and Zakaya takes those creations and turns them into sound. And from sound, we always think it's light first and then sound, but Zakaya says it's sound first and then light and then matter. It kind of steps. And Zakaya said, I need you I'm going to give you a new energy form, energy life force. And it's called Ama. So it's Ama, but you chant it. And what I was told was that this would be a more balanced, feminine, masculine wise, energetic than what we've been using in the past, like chi and other things. And that I was supposed to go to Lake Titicaca and sound it into the lake,
Wow.
which I did do. And there's a big story around that, which I won't go into right now. It was very dramatic. But I created a sound piece, and it's on my website for free, to start having people take into their consciousness if they wish, only if they wish, or try it out. Because it's an upgrade, apparently. I put all this out as possibility. for the more masculine forms that we've had in the past.
Mm.
So it might be something to try out and see how you think of it, since you're very skilled in this way. But yeah, the beauty of the symbol is that it is balance. It's absolutely
Balance.
balance.
Yes. So
That's
it's bringing
wonderful.
that, so it can help, would you say, help create resilience during these turbulent times
Oh,
because of that
uh,
balance?
absolutely. Here's the thing about resilience. We want to be flexible enough to bend to whatever the situation is.
Yes.
And we want to be resilient enough to come back to some kind of alignment, right?
Yeah.
Center
The
place.
bamboo in the wind. So it's just this, because of this microcosmic orbit, that is qigong. You work as a bamboo, you're rooted in the earth, but bamboo can bend, but then it returns.
That's right. And I love Qigong. I absolutely love it. And it's so simpatico with this technology. On my retreats, I often teach it in the morning. We start with some Qigong. So yeah, so what the wave can do if we and remember it's intelligent all by itself. So we don't have to, a lot of people are like, well, am I doing it right? No, no, no. It's not about that. You can't do it wrong. You can't do it right. It is just a thing. It's actually a symbol, right? It's a metaphor for the huge energy that it's representing, just like a cross is representative of a huge energy, you know?
Yes.
So the intelligence of the infinity wave is that if we invite it into our fields, invite it into our systems, often it will show us how it wants to be used in that particular moment. It may show up as blue, green, yellow, orange. It may be multiples. It may be going forward, maybe going backward. It may be coming through our hearts like this, right? There are 1,001 ways that it can appear and that it can be used. And I always just say, play with it. Just invite it in and see what happens. You might want to try to get it started. Easily, you can get it started in your heart chakra just by tracing your finger like this. That's a great way to begin. Just let your heart start to feel, because what that first and foremost does is gift ourselves with infinite love and compassion, something we're not used to gifting ourselves with, right?
And that's
So,
an interesting way that it can bridge the polarity as well. It's not just the masculine and the feminine, it's the giving and receiving, including
yes,
allowing ourselves to deeply receive as well.
very much so, very much so. And I have found, for myself, I had to go through that because as I was teaching these initial workshops, of course, I was learning the whole time too, and testing it out and changing as the participants were changing, fundamentally changing. I mean, and their lives started to turn 180 degrees, and they
Wow.
started even their faces started to change. It was remarkable. And I kept kind of rubbing my eyes and like, is this a real thing? And finally, by the end of 9 months, I was like, okay, this is a real thing, I guess. But it will soften all those edges of polarity. We don't want to be living in polarity. We want to be living in a multidimensional world. We want to have our feet on the ground. We want to be engaged with the earth. We want to be engaged with our lives in the most joyful way possible. We also want to be in touch with all of these realms that are above us. And excuse me, I kind of think that in the old days there was well, even now, Alice in Wonderland, there's one point her neck gets very, very long. And like that's the image I have. We have this multidimensionality all at the same time. We have access to these realms and we have access to this juicy world that we live in, that we've chosen to be in at this time for a very important reason. And we've got our feet engaged on the most beautiful planet ever, and engaged with Gaia and in the heartbeat of her. So it's really this beautiful multi-level living that we're after. And so the wave helps us to realign because it's flow, because it's water. Flow equals love and compassion. Love and compassion equals flow. So if we're finding ourselves being pulled off our center by something that happens in the news, something that happens in our relationships, something that happens, whatever, we get triggered. All we need to do, we've just bent, is do the wave, forward this way, sideways this way, whatever. Do the wave, put it in our hearts, however, and get ourselves back into flow. And it happens quickly. I've had so many experiences where the dynamic in myself completely shifts and takes me out of that reactive place so I can stay in that non-judgmental, non-reactive, calm water. We're all human. We're all going to get pulled, and we can become adept at getting back into our alignment. The most important thing right now, and what every Monday night when I do a channel meditation free on my, some of them are free, most of them are on my website. The information that has been coming through so consistently is that those of us who've chosen to be here now have chosen to become beacons of light, that we are beacons. What we need to do to maintain that beaconhood, right, is what we all have tools in our toolbox to use them to, as I and Pam are fond of saying, get into nature, get the infinity wave going, get whatever tools you need, silence, meditation, sound, whatever it is we need to be medicinal about maintaining that beaconhood, because we are not going to be of service if we are allowing ourselves to be dragged down and burdened. That doesn't mean blind, by current events.
What's so incredible about this is it's so fast and easy to use and so simple, like, yes, we might have time to do an hour-long yoga practice, but sometimes we just need like a few seconds to
Yes.
shift something quickly in the moment. So, that's what I'm really loving about this. And when you were talking about the colors and kind of playing with it, it's really inspired me to bring it into my healing work as well, because I'm sure there will be lots that will unfold in that kind of area of playing with it.
I've had so many healers write to me and say, when they start their session, before they say a word, no, whatever, they imagine the person in a wave, because that it opens the field, right?
Yes.
For what else is going to happen. And after a minute or two, the person will be lying there and says, "Oh gosh, I feel like I'm flowing. I feel like I'm, they'll say, I feel like I'm going in a figure eight." That they will feel it, and so I know it works for healers. It's fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
let you know. I'll let you know how it goes. I
Please.
realized like we're getting towards the end of the podcast and we haven't really yet touched upon the water aspect, which I'd love to talk about because I had Veda Austin on the podcast a few months ago and it was so inspiring. And we could have just had, I realize now, a whole podcast just talking about the water aspect, but let's just briefly touch on it. I know you've spoken about the flow, but there's and we have touched upon the intelligence, but not necessarily so much to do with the water aspect of that. I'd love to talk about the memory aspect, the ability of water to hold memory. And therefore, when we're flowing that through our system, what's happening on a cellular level? Does it have the potential to heal our traumas and almost like reprogram at a cellular level?
I believe so. I haven't measured this scientifically, and I'm so grateful to Veda. She's what a gift to humanity she is.
Absolutely.
And I've also had her on my channel. But when this all started, And I realized I'm dealing with a geometry and I'm dealing with water. Which one should I, do first? And so I went down the water rabbit hole. Um, and that's when I started to learn about structured water. And I dove into Dr. Emoto's work. Veda hadn't come on the scene yet. And I started to understand the intelligence of water, the consciousness of water. And I literally fell in love with water. And as I was falling in love with it, it was like it's like the seas were parting. I'm using a water metaphor, but that's how it was in my mind. And every time they parted, I found something deeper and deeper and deeper. And it was a beautiful process for me. Um, Water's qualities. Uh, just as we know, it is the greatest emulsifier on the planet. It is the greatest cleanser on the planet. It removes obstacles. It also takes the path of least resistance. It also has these qualities of rushing and roaring and the qualities of trickling and peace. So just saying those few things, you can see how useful it is with a tool like this because, and it's got color. You can add color to it. It can, it's got all these qualities. And then I learned, and I had a download one day as I was actually in Southern California. I was sitting in a hot tub. I was finishing up one of Dr. Emoto's books, and I was looking out to the Pacific Ocean with the sunlight on it.
Oh, beautiful.
So I'm just all in water, right? I'm just like
Yeah.
falling. And I realized, I don't know if I can't remember if I don't remember how it happened, but I was told that the light on the water is information that the water is receiving
Mm.
and disseminating in the oceans and the rivers and the lakes. That information comes in, moves through the waters, and then the water is reflecting information back. And this happens day and night.
That
So
makes total sense. And it's like, you know what? That's the yin and the yang, fire, water again. And all of the master chia practices that we do, the inner alchemy, the real cream of it is based on that, the fire, water alchemy.
yeah. So I was sitting there in that hot tub and it all just came together for me. I had been, as a layperson, looking at different areas of science and very curious and physics and very curious about what's the unifying principle. I know it should be something so obvious, like we don't even think about it because it's so obvious. And all of a sudden I went, oh my God, could it be water? Could water be so-called God? Could water be the thing? Because I knew it was in space. I knew it was, in everything. And I'm reading this book, and Dr. Emoto got to the very end, so close to saying those very words, but didn't say it in his book. However, I then listened to a show that he was on, and he said it in the show. And so I was like, okay, maybe water is the closest representation we have of what source is. And because it's in everything and in us. So then this is truly a gift of a loving universe. This is the way to
Beautiful.
access source quickly, directly, and easily. Boom. And I went, there you go. And of course, we know it's intelligent. Of course, we know it has consciousness. Of course, we know it has memory. So when we use it, let's say between ourselves or even on ourselves, because you asked about the cellular, what I see happening is that the water that we are imagining it is real, because our thoughts become reality. And when we place that into our bodies through our imagination, much like you do your practices, we're imagining these energies, right?
Yes.
But they are restructuring our
Yeah.
fields. So the water and the 10th dimensional love and compassion in that water is restructuring our very molecules. And when we do it to one another, it's restructuring both of us. So now the water in me is connecting me with the water in you through this high quality of love and compassion. So now we're both structured,
yeah.
and our conversation is structured. What could be better?
And that's I'm just going to see if I can squeeze in one last question. The manifestation quality of this, because you spoke earlier about how, you know, the heavens have no agency, the earth has no agency. You know, do we have any agency? You know, is it that flow between the three that then we begin that co-creative process that you know, that not only changes ourselves within a cellular level, but also has the potential to change our worlds kind of exponentially, really?
Yeah, absolutely. It's when we start to become more connected, because a lot of us are very connected upwards, but we're not as connected downwards.
It's harder.
And well, we just haven't, it hasn't been until relatively recently, the last 20 years, maybe, maybe longer, but you know, ancient shamanic ways have not been as present, as prevalent as meditate and go up.
Yeah.
We don't meditate and go down generally, you know, unless we have indigenous roots. And so to start waving above and below, we start to loosen up that disconnect that we have, and we begin to get connected and begin to hear better and open our intuition to what these two realms are asking of us. And so that is this whole idea of going direct is primary with the infinity wave. There, you know, I always say, look, I'll be your teacher, your guide for as long as you need, but really you can do this yourself. My whole thing is to empower others to be their own direct channel, above and below. And that's the reason I'm here. That's the reason I'm doing this. And so, yes, we have the capacity to open more and more to that guidance. And we all have guide teams. And I always tell people, get a divination tool. Learn how to dowse, learn how to use divination cards or I Ching or whatever it is and start and do what you're being told to do. Like follow the guidance. And whenever
that builds the trust as well,
that's
you know,
what I was just going to say.
In the universe, but also in ourselves and our ability to discern our path, you know.
Well, we get to build the relationship. You know, it's trust, yes, but it's trust in a relationship that we have available to us all the time that we tend to forget about, or maybe we're not even aware of. And when we realize, oh, I actually have a relationship with this tree, and this tree can offer me guidance. I have a relationship with my guide team and my higher self and that planet up there or that star system out there, you know, and each one of us has a different, you know, several places where we can receive guidance. And so I really encourage people to get a tool, because that's how you build that.
Incredible. This has been just so incredibly inspiring. Thank you so much, Hope.
Just the last thing I like to say is, let's remember this one simple fact, that we come into this world with our souls and we leave this world with our souls. So the whole job, the whole thing we're here to do is to polish that soul along the way, so that we leave more evolved than we arrived. So whenever we have a decision to make, a choice to make, I always say, ring the high bell. Do the thing that your higher self is cheering you on to do, because those choices are going to polish you and polish you and polish you. So when you leave, you don't have regrets.
Thank you so much. How can people find you, Hope?
My website is spreadinfinitehope.com, Same for my Facebook, same for my YouTube. And yeah, come. I have lots of things going on.
Wonderful. Well, do check out Hope, everyone. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And thank you, everyone, for listening in. Lots of love.
Thank you, Sarah. It was real joy.